Okay, let's dive right into Hebrews chapter 4.
Yeah, this chapter has some really compelling ideas.
It does. We're exploring this promise, this idea of entering a specific kind of rest.
And there's a real urgency about it, isn't there? A
Well,
warning almost for you not to fall short.
right. And it points out, this isn't the first time this message about rest has been given.
Exactly. It mentions an earlier generation who heard a similar message.
But tragically, they didn't enter that rest.
And the reason given is pretty stark.
Lack of faith, right? It says the message didn't do them any good because it wasn't combined with faith by those who heard it.
Precisely. So the failure wasn't the message itself, but the reception.
So this promise of rest, it's still on the table then.
Very much so.
Oh.
The text makes a point that those who have believed are the ones entering this rest now.
And it connects this rest all the way back, doesn't it? Back to creation.
Yeah, to God resting on the seventh day after finishing his work. It's sort of the archetype.
God's own rest is the ultimate pattern.
Yeah. And because God's rest serves as that pattern, the text emphasizes that the opportunity, the chance to enter, still remains for some people today.
Which implies, well, it explicitly says others missed out, the ones from the past.
Right, missed out because of disobedience. It links unbelief and disobedience quite closely there.
Then it gets specific about timing. God sets a particular day, calls it today.
Yes, through David, centuries later saying, "Today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts."
So the window of opportunity is presented as immediate as now.
And that timing is significant. It builds the case that if, say, Joshua, who led them into the promised land,
If he had given them this ultimate rest.
then God wouldn't, still be speaking about another day, this today, much later on through David.
Okay, so it's not just about entering a physical place or achieving peace through conquest. This Sabbath rest that still remains for God's people is something else.
It is. The text defines it quite powerfully
How so?
as resting from your own work, just as God rested from his.
Resting from our own efforts. That's quite a concept, like ceasing from striving.
Exactly. Ceasing from trying to achieve righteousness or security through your own doings, and instead relying on what God has done, aligning with his finished work.
That feels challenging. And the text insists on effort here, ironically. Make every effort to enter that rest.
It's an active kind of resting, if that makes sense, an intentional choice not to fall back into that old pattern of disobedience and self-reliance.
So a paradox. Strive to enter rest. Don't repeat the past failures.
Right, and then almost immediately the focus shifts. It moves from the rest itself to the very nature of God's communication.
Power of God's word. Yeah, this part is intense.
Described as living and active, sharper than any double-edged sword.
It doesn't just scratch the surface, does it? It says it penetrates, dividing even soul and spirit, joint and marrow.
Deep stuff. And its purpose, it judges the thoughts and attitudes of the heart, the innermost realities.
Wow. And that leads directly to the next point about God's perspective.
Yeah, that nothing in all creation is hidden from his sight. It's all uncovered and laid bare before him.
Every thought, every attitude, completely visible.
Which could be, frankly, terrifying if everything is exposed.
Especially knowing we mess up, that our thoughts and attitudes aren't always pure. So how does the text handle that exposure?
Well, this is where the tone shifts again, towards hope. It introduces Jesus.
As the great high priest, one who has passed through the heavens.
And because you have the specific high priest, the encouragement is to hold firmly to the faith you profess.
What's special about this high priest in light of that total exposure before God?
The key is sympathy. He can sympathize with our weaknesses.
Sympathize. How?
Because he was tempted in every way, just as we are, yet was without sin. He gets it. He understands the human struggle firsthand.
Okay, so he's not distant. He knows the pressure, the temptation, even though he never succumbed.
Exactly. That shared experience, minus the sin, is crucial.
And that understanding, that sympathy, changes how we view being laid bare before God.
It absolutely does. It leads to the final incredible conclusion of this section.
Which is?
Because you have this kind of high priest, holy, yet understanding you don't have to shrink back. You can actually approach the throne of grace with confidence.
Confidence. Even being fully known.
Confidence, specifically to receive mercy and find grace to help you in your time of need. The very exposure that could cause fear becomes a context for receiving grace because of Jesus.
Okay, so let's quickly recap. There's a promised rest, a deeper kind of rest, still available.
Right, but entering it takes faith, an active letting go of self-effort, mirroring God's rest.
And God sees everything, right down to our deepest thoughts and intentions, nothing hidden.
And this is the game changer. You have a great high priest, Jesus, who fully understands your weaknesses because he lived them.
And because of him, that total visibility before God isn't a reason for dread, but an invitation to confidently approach his throne for mercy and grace.
Precisely. Mercy for the failures, grace for the ongoing need.
So here's a thought to maybe chew on from this deep dive. How does holding these two truths together, the fact that everything about you is completely uncovered and laid bare before God, and the invitation to approach his throne of grace with total confidence for mercy, how does that combination change the way you think about what it means to be fully known?